right.
Oh, right over here. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wow. All right. Am I actually being amplified, or is it only for the... Okay, I'm holding a microphone, but it's not really working for us because the family of Mrs. Holland is on watching this via the wonders of the World Wide Web. So that's, if you keep in mind that it's not just us gathered here for this great moment, but also our friends across the globe. So welcome, and from all of us, welcome. Excuse me? Oh. We don't need this. Yeah. That's okay. So to those of you that I have not yet met, I'm Jennifer Barlaman. I'm the current executive director of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. I just joined the orchestra in January, and it has been such a tremendous opportunity to get to know all of you and to be part of this momentous occasion. We've had a number of momentous occasions here at the Atlanta Symphony, but this is one. This one is very special to us. So we're here to thank you and to thank you, Larry, for allowing the gift of Mrs. Holland to go toward helping us complete our Musicians Endowment campaign, which was, as we just announced last week, it was completed about 2 years ahead of schedule. What it will do for us is it'll permit us to permanently endow 11 new positions in the orchestra, added to bring the orchestra back to its full complement of 88 musicians. And when I was talking with someone about this last week, they pointed out that it's the same number of keys on a piano. So it's sort of like playing with a full deck or playing with a full team, if you want to use those analogies. For us, our keyboard will soon be complete. The instrument of the orchestra will be back to its full artistic health and size, and we're so thrilled about that and thrilled to welcome these musicians. Now, none of this would be possible without this incredibly generous gift from Mrs. Holland, who was such a supporter of the orchestra and so believed in the orchestra's ambitions and its impact on this wonderful community that she made tremendously generous gifts. I wish that I had had the opportunity to meet her. I've had the opportunity to hear what she was like, and it sounds as though she was a beautiful, gorgeous woman on the inside and on the outside, and her generosity will be now making the Atlanta Symphony even more vibrant than it has been for many generations to come. So thank you so much. Thank you, Larry, and thank you to her family for this incredibly generous gift and for allowing us to make her name a part of this building for many, many years to come. So I'm going to hand the microphone and the floor now to Larry.
Bravo. Keep it up. Thank you very much. Yes, we are on television, and Nielsen probably can't even rate it. There are going to be so many people watching because everybody I know, I've told them. But it is a happy day as we gather tonight to remember Betty Gage Holland and name the Symphony Loge in her memory and in her honor. First, I thank Jennifer for putting all this together and for the Symphony Board and for management in naming the Loge for Mrs. Holland. Very well deserved. I particularly thank Tony Paz for putting together the program for the World Wide Web. We do have Mrs. Holland's family who are watching us tonight. Her daughters live in Monaco, Betty Gambascini and Sally Marcucci. It's getting a little late in Europe, but they certainly are up watching us. Mrs. Holland had 4 grandchildren scattered around the world. Shasha Gambascini, who lives in New York and Milan. Riccardo Gambascini, who lives in Milan. Carlo Marcucci, who lives in Los Angeles. And Massimo Marcucci, who lives in London. Also with us would be the great-granddaughter, a new generation coming along, and that would be Ariel Baron, who is currently living in Los Angeles. So all these people get to participate with us because of the marvels of modern technology. which I don't understand a lot about it, but it's great. We were supposed to have Mrs. Holland's niece, Ginger Cashin, but they had a doctor's appointment and could not come. I had the privilege and good fortune of meeting Mrs. Holland in 1971. I was young, I was green behind the ears, and I was a new trust officer at CNS National Bank. She was captivating, and I knew from the moment I met her that she was someone very, very special. She was born June 30, 1914, Fort Monroe, Virginia, the daughter of General Philip S. Gage and Mrs. Irene Toll Gage. Beecham Carr and I were talking beforehand about how regal she was. Excuse me, and that certainly reflects her military upbringing. But she grew up, General Gage was in the Army. She grew up initially in Hawaii, where he was stationed. Then when he went to the Army War College, Mrs. Gage, Mrs. Holland, Betty, and her brother Phil lived in the south of France, where she went to school. Atlanta had good fortune when General Gage was transferred to Fort McPherson when she was only maybe 14 or 15 and came to Atlanta. I knew some of her classmates before they died, and the uniform stories I heard was that when she came to Atlanta, everybody could not believe how beautiful this person was, how charming and how captivating she was. And she never varied from that as she grew older. After finishing school at Washington Seminary, she married Devereaux Lippett, who was an upcoming attorney from Wilmington, North Carolina. He became a very successful businessman. They were blessed with 2 children, Betty and Sally. I was going to tell the year of their birth, but Janet, who works for me, says that you never should tell a lady's age, so I won't tell you when they were born. But Mr. Lippett died early in 1954, prematurely. The girls at that time were in Italy, in Florence, attending school, and Mrs. Holland, after the death of Mr. Lippett, she moved to Florence to be with the girls. She came home in 1958 for Christmas to visit with her parents, for General and Mrs. Gage, who were living here, of course. And on that visit, she went to a dinner party given by Roby Robinson, and she met this charming man named James M. Cox, Jr. at that dinner party. And the story I've always heard is that he told her that night, "How would you like for your name to be Betty Cox?" Anyway, they married about 3 months later, and they were married until he died in 1974. After that point, about 5 years later, she met Mr. William J. Holland, who was an Atlanta businessman. His wife had died. They married in 1979. He died in 2001. After 3 husbands, all of whom had died, I told her she was a bad, bad risk, and there was no man around who would dare marry her with 3 husbands that she had survived. We laughed as we calculated that altogether she had exceeded the golden wedding anniversary 50-year mark, but she had to put 3 husbands together to reach 50 years of marriage. She was a determined and strong woman. We marveled when she swam a mile on her 80th birthday. She loved travel, particularly visiting sites of antiquity, getting exposure to the various cultures of the world. She loved the churches of Europe, and she loved showing her family, her children and her grandchildren the world and introducing them to the world. And she was a very frugal lady. Anyone who knew her well would tell you that, and she would tell you that. But when the Concorde offered a round-the-world tour on the Concorde that lasted 30 days or so, she was one of the first to sign up. I know with her spirit of adventure, if she were around now when all the talk is going on about the Mars venture, she would be on some of the very early sign-ups for that trip. But her most enduring quality was one of kindness and warmth to everyone. She was open and kind to the janitor, as open and kind to the janitor in her condo building as she was to anyone of high status and accomplishment. No one who met her walked away understanding who did not understand they had met a beautiful and extremely rare individual who cared about them. And I place emphasis on them as it was about others, not herself. Her beauty, even as she approached age 90, never diminished. She was a woman of great faith and loved her church, All Saints Episcopal. After she received a cancer diagnosis, Betty and Sally returned from Europe for her final weeks, and there are some great and funny stories about her acceptance of her impending death. She died May 15, 2004. She knew she had been richly blessed, and she delighted in sharing with the community. She personally funded the Philip and Irene Toll Gage Foundation, which is still an operating foundation. She directed distributions from the Jim Cox Jr. Foundation, which was funded under the will of Mr. Cox. Contributions were made during her life and continue to be made for a variety of causes: health, education, social services, and religion, with a strong focus on the arts. Significant contributions were made to the Woodruff Arts Center, to the High Museum, to the Alliance Theater, and for this group, especially to the Atlanta Symphony. She gave to the Atlanta Opera. When the thought of a new Symphony Hall was just beginning, she directed a grant of $1.4 million to cover all costs of getting the project up and running. In the summer of 2000, when the campaign was underway, she stepped forth and personally gave $5 million from her personal funds. Unfortunately, the economy took a nosedive and the building was not built. But her $5 million was put to good use by the symphony, enabling the symphony to continue to make great music. That music is a wonderful, wonderful memorial to the beautiful tapestry of her life. The dedication of the Loge to her memory is much appreciated by her family, but I would be the first to tell you that were she here, with sincere modesty, she would say, "But I don't deserve it. We all know better." Thanks again for participating this afternoon. Jennifer, are we going to have the unveiling? Tony?
Please come. Please come. Ready. Wait. Come please. Ready. Oh my goodness. Oh, great.
Bravo!
With that, we'll sign off. Family all over the world, we love doing this for you.
Isn't that beautiful? Shall we have a toast in memory and honor of Betty?
Very sweet.
Well,
She would have loved it.
I'm not